Hello and welcome to ThePrint. A few weeks ago, the US Department of Justice laid out an indictment against three different transnational criminal gangs, one of which was against Lawrence Bishnoi, and also adding that as the investigation finds, that the Bishnoi gang was behind the killing of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, an Indian designated terrorist. For those who are watching, the case surrounding Nijjar cratered ties between India and Canada after the then Canadian Prime Minister in September 2023, Justin Trudeau, claimed or alleged that there are allegations of Indian government officials linked to the killing of Nijjar. The High Commissioner at that time of India and Canada was Mr. Sanjay Kumar Verma, who is joining us here at ThePrint today to sort of discuss the entirety of the India-Canada ties, and in particular, the period with regards to the immediate aftermath of Prime Minister Trudeau's comment. Thank you, sir, for joining us here at ThePrint.
Thank you very much for having me.
High Commissioner, you must have seen the U.S. Department of Justice indictment. You've seen multiple related arrests. I think something like more than 24 individuals across North America have been arrested. So how big really is the Khalistan problem in Canada? Or is it just sort of a ruse for criminal activities like narcotic smuggling? Because if you see, the results of the Department of Justice indictments, and this is just the opening salvo, right? So how do you really see the Khalistan problem in Canada?
In Canada, what has happened is that in the garb of the freedom of speech, the propagandist Khalistani extremists started their appearance on the Canadian scene. And slowly, what we realized is that they are actually getting into anti-India activities in Canada, but they're also prompting violence against the Indian community in Canada, extortion in Canada, as well as prompting violence in the Indian territory as well, through transfer of money through Hawala, using our neighboring countries to sneak in weapons and other things. So in a way, till the time it is only contained within the geographical boundaries of Canada, it's a Canadian issue, largely. As far as we are concerned, since they keep harping upon our sovereignty and territorial integrity. So, of course, we'll raise that point, and we'll raise that point with quite a gusto, and we did it all the time. But when it crosses the border into India, it becomes our problem as well. And that is what we have been telling our Canadian counterparts all the time. As far as Khalistanis themselves are concerned, so Canada uses a word or acronym. They call it Canada-based Khalistani extremists, CBKEs. And many of them are terrorists as we are concerned. But even if they are extremists, they are involved in gun running, they're involved in drugs, they're involved in racketeering, they're involved in extortions, they're involved in human trafficking. And what it does is, all these illegal activities generate finances for them. These finances are used, and they, my understanding is, if I'm wrong, I need to be corrected, that many of those places of worship, gurudwaras, which are under the control of these Khalistani elements, they also steal money from there in order to finance their nefarious activities, particularly targeting against India. And this is not only in Canada, this is all linked because, there is a huge mobility between Canada and the US. So all these people are linked with activities, illegal activities, transnational crime, which happens in the US as well. One of the persons named in the indictment, and I'm not going on to the merit of the indictment, I'm just stating, taking it from the indictment, is Goldie Brar. And Goldie Brar had been on the BOLO list of Canada during my period. The BOLO list is, in a way, supported by RCMP. Now, the same Goldie Brar appears in the indictment in the US for crimes in the US. So this is the connection I wanted to make, that though they could be resident in the US or Canada, they are creating nuisance in both the places.
Right, and this whole case came to light, at least at the highest of political levels, on 18th of September 2023, right, when the then Prime Minister made this sort of link in Canada of Indian government officials. You see this in CSIS reports, the intelligence reports on Indian interference in Canada. It comes quite often, almost in every year of their report. So, in this two-part question, the first is, what really was, when Trudeau made these allegations, did the Canadian government at any point share any information or evidence with the government of India to actually look into? And the second part of that question is, did those allegations made by a sitting Prime Minister also have an impact on Canada's own internal security? Did Trudeau's policies at that point hamper its own domestic security?
So let me start with your first query. And there I think that there was no credible evidence presented to us. The two NSAs had met a couple of times. The two foreign ministers also had met a couple of times. And this was one of the talking points in the entire conversation that they had, which was largely the entire bilateral relation review and way forward. But no credible evidence was presented to us which we can follow. Now, if Canada is a country which is based on the rule of law, India too is, and therefore, if there are evidences which cannot be supported by not evidences, if there are claims or information which cannot be backed up by credible evidence, it is neither here nor there. So therefore, in response to your first question, of course, there was no credible evidence presented to us which we could have followed up in India. That's our territory, that's our jurisdiction. On the second question of yours, they did. I mean, if you look at the very first known large Canadian event in which Khalistani extremists were involved, it was blowing off of Air India 182 Kanishka. And in all 329 passengers there, the largest number was that of Canadians. They might be of Indian origin, but on the day they martyred themselves in the dirty hands of these Khalistani extremists, they were all Canadian citizens after all. So if you start from there, then get into the extortion. The extortion was affecting the Canadian society. Yes, many of them were of the Indian origin. Some of them were Indian nationals as well. But nevertheless, this extortion was in the Canadian society, so it was a threat to Canadian public security. Third one was drugs. Now, drugs were being peddled in Canada, in the US. So therefore, it was a threat to the Canadian society. Fourth one was human trafficking. Again, human trafficking is an extremely dangerous criminal activity wherein human lives have no values and no value. So therefore, what we saw, some of those Indian nationals or people of Indian origin crossing to Canada also died. So therefore, that also posed a threat in Canada, whether to the Indian nationals or the Canadian nationals, they did. And finally, the gun running. All these killings, murders which have been happening in Canada, where Khalistani extremists were part of it, all of these were a threat to the Canadian society. So yes, Khalistani extremists do pose a huge danger, a credible danger to the Canadians in Canada.
So my follow-up question to that then is, if they, if the Canadian government sees that these Khalistani extremists pose a credible threat, then the question, and this may be slightly political, is that what really then was Trudeau's sort of position in making those claims in the floor of the parliament, but also the sense that the entire point of Trudeau's policy was sort of defending his own political coalition. That was the perception at that time. What was your reading while you were serving there?
See, if you recall our first statements in this connection, we started with it is politically motivated. And that is what we still stand on, that it was politically motivated step in order to probably save his own political future. Any sitting prime minister making such statements in the parliament should have been backed by solid evidence, credible evidence, legally acceptable evidence. None of these were there. So, so it was whatever he did, he could have waited for the investigation to be completed. And if there was any implication through the investigation, conclusion of the investigation, as the Prime Minister of a country, he would have been very much in his right, in the reasonable right to make such claims. But unfortunately, after 3 years, nothing has come out. And as far as the statement to the parliament is concerned, that itself, in a way, circumstantially, stands null and void.
Right. And now, moving forward, now you have Prime Minister Makani, and you've seen this current government who's sort of started taking strong security actions against, strong measures to, for example, counter immigration problems, right? Because they've had a affordability crisis in Canada over the last couple of years. You've seen that, some of these immigration programs, there have been allegations that they were being used by these transnational criminal organizations to bring in, their members. How do you really see the stronger measures that are being sort of implemented in, currently?
So a couple of things were happening. Let me tell your viewers on that. So most of the Indian students who were going to Canada, they really went as students. There could have been some slipping into the system without being a bona fide student. That could be there. But they went there as students. And thereafter, in order to support them, Canada is an expensive country after all. So in order to support them, they would take up odd jobs, serving coffee in McDonald's and that kind of things. So Indian students also did it. Some of them were targeted by the Khalistani gangs. And they will be brainwashed and recruited. And brainwashing was very simple. That, why we will provide you place to stay, we'll provide you food. Why don't you come and join our so-called protests and anti-India protests? Then these innocent boys and girls will go there without understanding what they're doing. Then once they are there, they will discredit Indian flag, they will shout out anti-India slogans, they will read out violent threats against Indian officials, Indian diplomats, Indian leadership, and Indians in general. So all these things they will capture in a video, and then those students will be asked to go and stake a claim for asylum. And the simple basis of that would be that, look, this is what I have done under your law of freedom of speech, and now if I go back to India, I'll be targeted. So that is how the entire recruitment process was done. One of the streams. There are other streams as well. And then these students would apply for asylum. Now, it was not that difficult to get asylum in Canada. But thank God, in past 1.5 years, the system has been tightened up. And today I can say with confidence that many of false, fraudulent asylum claims are being summarily rejected and the person being sent back to the home country. So yes, in the present administration in Canada, on the asylum side, things have improved. On scrutiny of visa applications, things have improved. And certainly on fighting the transnational crime, things have further improved.
And that brings me to my final question, High Commissioner. And it's sort of, in the last year, you've sort of seen a stabilization in ties between India and Canada. You've seen Prime Minister Modi travel last year for the G7 summit in Alberta. Prime Minister Mark Carney made a visit in March this year. There are, rumors that Prime Minister Modi may visit the country again, negotiations for an FTA. How do you see and where do you see the India-Canada relationship going from here? And I only ask this because during your tenure, I think it was on the 2nd of September 2023, when Canada suspended the CEPA negotiations before, the allegations by Trudeau came out. So the script has been done in the past, right? How do you see it going now in the future?
So if I look at the present pathway to the future, India and Canada are talking to each other, have agreed to improve the relationship, have agreed to take each other's concerns. And this I'm telling you not as a government servant. I have retired from the Indian Foreign Service, but as a concerned Indian citizen who is an observer of India-Canada relationship. So today, when you look at it, there was university delegation in India, foreign minister had come, the international trade minister had come. There are so many provincial leadership who visited India. The prime ministerial delegation was here, prime minister himself was here. So if you look at all these things, these augur very well for a good India-Canada relationship. And that's what I wish for. The episode should be behind us, but in the episode, those people who have suffered, their prestige, their reputations should be restored. They should be cleared of everything which was told in the media, at the floor of the parliament, to malign them, to wrong them. So these things need to be corrected after all. Their families have suffered, and it's not me. I had my colleagues as well who were asked to leave the country and declared persona non grata. The entire family suffers due to that. So that is an issue which need consideration from both sides and see how best to resolve this issue. Now, on the CEPA, on the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement you talked about, you're right. Actually, the first round of CEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, was launched way back in 2010. And then it continued for almost, if I'm not mistaken, for 6 years. The negotiations continued. And then it was realized that the two negotiating sides are not able to converge the position and therefore looked like undoable. And then the two countries agreed to launch another kind of negotiation, which is technically known as Early Harvest Scheme. And between the two countries, we called it Early Progress Trade Agreement, EPTA. That continued till the time Canada put a pause on it. And we were very close to finalizing it, the two sides. But nevertheless, it was paused. And thereafter, the two prime ministers met and they decided to relaunch CEPA negotiation, which is absolutely new because the ground realities have changed. The economic size and economic might has changed. The priorities would have changed a little bit. So therefore, the new CEPA rounds of negotiations, though it is CEPA negotiation 2 coming from the past, or EPTA plus, but in real terms, these are absolutely brand new rounds of negotiations launched by the two countries. And I would hope to see the conclusion to even a partial conclusion in a way to activate some of the provisions of CEPA by the end of the year. That will be a wonderful cherry on the pie. If you look at the universities, they are collaborating. Canada is trying to open courses in Indian universities now that will save a lot of foreign exchange for the Indian students who initially traveled to Canada. So now they will be traveling to Canada at a later stage. If you look at the innovation, there is a lot of innovation to and fro between India and Canada. If you look at the pension funds, today Canada has invested close to about 100 billion Canadian dollars, which is close to say 73, 74 billion US dollars in India through their pension funds, which are very persistent, which are very patient. So therefore, I think investment relations, trade relations, innovation, students, people to people, all these things are improving. They are on the right track, and I hope to see back to better relationship of the two countries very soon.
Right, High Commissioner. That was my last question. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having this conversation with the ThePrint.
Thank you very much, and best wishes to you.